Hello, I'm doing a book review, and the book I want to review is Gotham by Gaslight. Now, this is a graphic novel written by Brian Augustyn and illustrated by Mike Mignola. I think I'm saying his name right, I'm not sure. And of course, published by DC Comics and featuring the character of Batman, who was originally created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger. Now, this is one of DC's Elseworlds stories. Elseworlds, for those of you who don't know, is something that DC used to do. I'm not sure if they still do it, but it's something they used to do where it's a story that's specifically set outside of continuity, and they do radically different things with the characters. Like, essentially, they're what-if stories for some of their popular characters. Like, sometimes they might give a character a completely different origin, or a character who's typically a good guy could be a bad guy in this new continuity. But basically the concept of this is, what if Bruce Wayne and other characters from the Batman mythos were actually alive in the late 19th century? And it's basically, what if Batman fought Jack the Ripper? But the plot of this story is it's set in 1889, which in real life was a year after the Jack the Ripper killings happened in London. Now, in the story, Bruce Wayne, who as a child witnessed the murder of his parents, is studying psychology in Europe, but he returns to the States, specifically his home city of Gotham, and he becomes a masked vigilante going after Gotham's criminals. But it turns out there's somebody going around Gotham killing young women, and people are noticing that these murders are very similar to the Jack the Ripper killings, which occurred in London a year prior. And it turns out that these are not copycat killings. This is actually the Jack the Ripper killing people in Gotham, and there are people who think that there might be some kind of connection between the Batman and Jack the Ripper. So in the story, Batman is trying to figure out who Jack the Ripper actually is, but things get complicated when Bruce Wayne is accused of being Jack the Ripper. But Gotham by Gaslight I thought was a very interesting graphic novel, and it is a really cool idea. And the book does a really good job at getting into the psychology of both Batman and Jack the Ripper, even though you don't actually find out who Jack the Ripper is till the end of the story. But there are parts of this comic that are narrated by the killer, and you realize that he's basically a misogynist, but he's particularly haunted by one woman from his past, and he sees this woman in pretty much every woman. And Mike Mignola's artwork in this comic is fantastic, and he does a really good job at sort of capturing the look and feel of this era. I also thought it was interesting how Augustyn made Sigmund Freud a character in this story. Granted, he's only at the beginning, but I still thought that was kind of cool. You also get a very brief shot of what is basically this universe's version of the Joker. And this graphic novel actually comes with an introduction from Robert Bloch, the same Robert Bloch who wrote Psycho and was also pretty much a protege of H.P. Lovecraft. Robert Bloch does the introduction here, which is written as if it's an actual letter from Jack the Ripper. I do think it's interesting how this graphic novel was published at the same time that Alan Moore started his comic book series From Hell, which was also about Jack the Ripper. Now, if you wanted to, I guess you could compare this to From Hell. Now, as much as I did like this graphic novel, I would say From Hell is definitely a lot more sophisticated and a lot more cerebral and philosophical. Now, Brian Augustyn did a sequel to this in 1991 called Batman Master of the Future. Now, even though this book is specifically set outside of the main DC continuity, there was a story arc in 2005 and 2006 called Infinite Crisis, which dealt with the concept of a multiverse, and I believe at some point during that story arc, I think the Atom actually traveled into the same universe that this graphic novel takes place in, actually tying this graphic novel in with the main canon. Batman. Now, in 2018, there was an animated film adaptation of this graphic novel, which I thought was excellent. It was probably one of the best of the animated Batman films, but that movie changed a lot from the graphic novel. The movie had a completely different twist. It added a couple of characters. Obviously, they were all characters that we're already familiar with, but they weren't characters that showed up in the original graphic novel, and from what I understand of the plot of Master of the Future, it seems like that movie took some plot elements from the sequel graphic novel. But it was still really good, and I'm actually planning on doing a review on the movie pretty soon, and recently me and some friends of mine did a retrospective on all the animated Batman films, and we of course do talk about the movie in that retrospective. That retrospective should go up in the next week or so. But yeah, that was my review on Gotham by Gaslight by Brian Augustyn, and bye.